They're looking at over 400 ash trees.
For being here. So this is the first webinar of the Grand Isle County Emerald Ash Borer Task Force. Tonight we're going to be hearing from Bill Barron, who is the task force chair. We're also going to hear from Nancy Patch, who is our Grand Isle County forester. We're also going to hear from Ginger Nickerson, who's at UVM Extension with the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry program. Let me know if I didn't say that right, Ginger. I want to make sure I'm representing everyone. Also myself, I'm Guy Maguire from South Your Land Trust, and we'll be hearing from Molly Varner with the Natural Resource Conservation District. So just a real quick about the land trusts. So we've been around since 1997. We help conserve farmland as well as natural areas. We also do farm viability, stewardship and education work, not just in South Hero, but throughout the islands. You can, of course, see us on Facebook or go to our website. If you want to contact me, you can either send me an email at guy@shlt.org or info@shlt.org, like on the page there. So the Grand Isle County Emerald Ash Borer Task Force, I think that Bill will probably go into more detail on this, but formed in 2019, I believe, maybe 2018. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but and you can also like us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page that we have been posting on, and if you want to join the email list, Bill will usually send around the news and updates about things going on. So if you want to get on the task force email list, feel free to send Bill an email. So tonight we are going to be going till about 8:30, and I'll be the Q&A moderator. So if you have questions during the presentation, you can send those to me in the chat bar, and Molly will also be helping too. So if you want to send questions to her, you can also do that, or you can send a question just to the general audience over the chat. I'll be muting everyone but the speaker while they're going, just so we can kind of keep the audio as clean as possible. If we don't get through all the questions, we will collect them. So I'm going to be actually taking all the questions and putting them in a Word document. So in case we don't get to all of them, I'll keep those, and then we can get back to you all over email after the event in case there's lots of questions or discussion. So we will have Q&A sessions in between each speaker, so you will have a chance. If you don't have a question the first time, there will be other opportunities. Yeah, I'll be sending around a feedback form afterwards, asking you how the event went. Yeah, hopefully that's all. I don't think I probably missed something, but we're going to go ahead and hear from everyone. We're going to start actually with Molly. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here, and Molly, all yours.
All right, can everyone see the slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Guy, for introducing me. I'm Molly. I'm the project manager for Grand Isle County Natural Resource Conservation District. I'm both new to the position and the state of Vermont, and it's been a great experience being welcomed by such a kind and passionate community, these 4 people included. So just to give you all a very abbreviated history, conservation districts were organized and created by federal law in 1937 in response to the devastating soil erosion conditions often referred to as the Dust Bowl. That same year, President Roosevelt pushed for soil conservation, which resulted in the formation of soil conservation boards across the country. In 1939, Vermont passed the Soil Conservation Act, which enabled the creation of conservation districts in Vermont. So the scope of districts eventually broadened, and today they work to service all areas of natural resource conservation. So in Vermont, there are 14 districts across the state, with Grand Isle County NRCD representing the Champlain Islands and Northern Lake Champlain watershed basin. So while the missions of each district are parallel, we each operate independently to cater to the needs of our county and community. And Grand Isle has the lucky task of catering to Grand Isle's unique habitats and strong cultural heritage. So led by partnerships with local organizations such as South Here Land Trust, watershed groups, towns, and state and federal agencies, we identify projects that address the common goal of land conservation and water quality. So by helping businesses, landowners, producers, municipalities, and other stakeholders to better access valuable resources and technical assistance and assess management decisions, we really hope to bring conservation into sort of every cornerstone of citizens within Grand Isle County. So our areas of focus include agricultural assistance, water quality, watershed stewardship, and education to the next generation of islanders. So you can see below, that's my contact information. Please connect with us on Facebook, email me, we'd love to hear from you. And hopefully you'll be seeing a bit more of us around town. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Molly. Okay, so Bill, I think you are good to go. You should be able to share your screen. Let me know how that goes.
Hold on just a second. Let me the slideshow up here. There we go. Everybody hear me all right?
All set.
Great, thank you. Again, my name's Bill Barron. I'm the tree warden in the town for the town of Grand Isle, and I also serve on the Grand Isle County Emerald Ash Borer Task Force. This program was put together a couple of years ago with some help from folks at UVM Extension and the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation Urban and Community Forestry Program. A couple of really good websites, the vtinvasives.org and vtcommunityforestry.org. Great resources for not only EAB, but other invasive information and information about forestry in our communities. So an invasive species, two criteria. It has to be non-native to the ecosystem under consideration, and its introduction is likely to cause harm, economic, environmental, or harm to human health, and certainly EAB fits those two categories. This slide is of a forested area in Wisconsin, forested primarily in ash, and this is after EAB has gone through the area, and you can see huge amount of mortality in that forested landscape. At that point in time, there was almost $11 billion spent on treatment and removal and replacement, and to no avail in slowing EAB down. Here's Toledo, Ohio in 2006, before EAB, a nice ash-lined street. And one thing about green ash in particular, it has been widely used in the urban landscape as a kind of a go-to tree. It's great, it withstands soil compaction and all those other tough conditions that you might associate in an urban landscape. So widely planted, not so much now, but in the past. And this is 2006 before EAB, and 2009, 3 years later after EAB has moved through this area in Toledo, Ohio. And those trees represent a huge hazard and a huge cost in takedown and other benefits. So the general consensus is that almost all of the ash trees in North America will succumb to EAB at some point in time. The range of ash, quite wide ranging. Typically in the Northeast here, we're really dealing with black ash, green ash, and white ash. There's blue ash, pumpkin ash, so there are different varieties, but primarily black, green, and white are what we're going to find in Vermont. And beyond just the ash trees, there are a number of insects and spiders that really depend on these trees for food and shelter. So when we eliminate something from the ecosystem, it's got wide-ranging effects. There's all sorts of documentation about the benefits of urban trees to human health, and there's been a lot of research as EAB goes through areas like you saw in Toledo and has wiped out large expanses of urban trees, how that adversely affects human health. So the threats in Vermont, about 1 in 12 trees in Vermont are ash. Depending on who you talk to, that represents probably about 160 million trees. And you can see in the Champlain Islands and kind of throughout the Champlain Valley, there's a greater amount of ash as compared to other regions in the state. In Grand Isle County, and again, this depends on who you talk to and kind of where you are in the county, but anywhere from 30 to 60% of the trees in the Champlain Islands are either green or black ash. And you don't have to look very far in our communities. You find them along roadsides, near public buildings. A lot of the abandoned ag land has grown up in green ash in particular. And we've also planted green ash in our landscape, especially after the ice storm in '98. There were a large number of green ash planted in a variety of public places after the ice storm. There's also impacts to forest-based manufacturing, as well as forest-based recreation. A number of communities inventory their public trees. And right now, they've recorded about 12,000 trees in a number of cities and towns throughout Vermont. And they average about $100 per tree in benefits. And that could be increased property value, air quality improvement, maybe some energy savings, carbon dioxide reduction, and certainly of late stormwater runoff mitigation. And about 9% of these 12,545 trees are ash. And those will be removed eventually from the environment. Burlington alone has about 1,000 ash trees in its road right-of-way. This does not count ash trees that might be in their parks or cemeteries or other public spaces. And they figure it's going to cost them about $500,000 to remove these trees and replace the trees. In Johnson, just along back roads for more of a rural community, they're looking at over 400 ash trees and removal costs north of $100,000. We have done some inventory work in the islands. South Hero has inventoried their ash trees on the road right-of-way, and they have about 750 or so ash trees, about 10% of which are 18 inches or greater in diameter. Both Grand Isle and North Hero have in excess of 900 ash trees, either in the road right-of-way or in some sort of a public space. We still have to do inventory work in Isle Lamont and Alberg, and hopefully that will be accomplished this summer. So the story of EAB, I mean, it has its origins in Asia, likely got to us on shipping dunnage, and then has been moved around a bit by human vector, forest products, nursery stock, and the big culprit, kind of in the lower left-hand corner, is the movement of firewood. The adult EAB only travels about 2 miles a year on its own, but it's great on hitching rides on especially firewood. So it was first detected in 2002 in the Detroit area. I think the general thought is that it had been established there for quite some time prior to 2002, but was really kind of noticed and identified in 2002. And I'll let the next few slides kind of speak for themselves. Here we are in 2004. There is a little bit of an outlier in Washington, and the consensus there is that probably is a separate infestation that came through on some shipping dunnage. And trying to think back to the range map of ash that I showed a little earlier in the presentation. Here we are in 2005. And again, it's human vector. The adult is only able to fly a couple of miles. So this is all pretty much human spread. 2006, 7. Now we're up into Canada in 2008. And all of these different colors just represent these particular years where these infestations have been identified. Just to give you an idea, Grand Isle State Park and many of Vermont state parks would, for lack of a better word, confiscate firewood if it came from greater than 50-mile radius from the park. The firewood would be bagged up and labeled as to its point of origin. And there are actually campers who are coming to Grand Isle State Park and transporting firewood from the Carolinas and the Virginia area in the back of their pickup truck because they had free firewood, and why buy firewood in Vermont if you can haul it from North Carolina or Virginia? So it huge movement of firewood and a big vector for this pest. 2012, it's now around the Montreal area, just south of Montreal, but just a little north of the Vermont border. Here we are, 2014, some discoveries down in southern New Hampshire. We've also found it in Massachusetts and kind of outside of the Albany region in New York. 2015, you can see that there's actually an infestation out in Denver. And here we are in June of 2017, and Vermont is this isolated kind of oasis in the infestation pattern of EAB. Although I think the general consensus was from foresters and those in the know was that EAB was in all likelihood in Vermont prior to 2017. It just had yet to be discovered. And here we are today, as of May 2020, and these are all of the areas, known areas of infestation. So the darker color is kind of this 5-mile radius of the area that has been, where the insect has been detected. The lighter color is like a 10-mile radius where there's suspected infestation. And if you look up in Grand Isle County, you can see that there are 2 known locations, one in the northern part of the county, one in the southern part of the county. So in the fall of 2018, it was discovered in the southern part of South Hero. And actually one of our task force members, a forester with the Vermont Electric Co-op, happened to notice the infestation during a camping trip. And the S patterns of the galleries are very distinct. And if you'll notice on the right, there's the adult insect, which is, you can set the adult on a penny and still have room to spare. And then the larva is segmented, kind of bell-shaped, might be up to about 10 segments, and that can be anywhere from 1 inch to about 1.25 inches in length. And here's the task force with at this particular infestation site in South Hero. Nancy Patch is leading a discussion, and you'll hear from Nancy, our county forester, a little later on in the presentation. But you can look at those ash trees and you can tell they're not healthy. There's a lot of dieback, a little tough to see, but there's some flecking of bark from woodpecker damage, and a lot of epicormic sprouts. And this is the beast, quite pretty actually, metallic green, but huge, causes huge harm. There are some lookalikes, easily confused. Take a minute to look at those. And the life cycle. So this time of year, according to a state entomologist, we're looking at usually around the 1st of June for the adults to emerge and the mating cycle to begin. The adults will live for about 7 to 10 days. The female, during that 7 to 10 day period, can lay upwards of 30 to 60 individual eggs. And those eggs are laid in the fissures of the ash bark. Some females can live longer, up to 2 or more weeks, and they can deposit upwards of 200 eggs. The eggs hatch, the larva begins to burrow into the outer bark and then into the inner bark of the phloem and begins to feed and feeds over the summer. And again, these very distinct S-shaped galleries, they're typically filled with frass, like sawdust like frass from the insect. Leads to winter, where the insect will often move in, or the larva will be kind of pre-pupae and will move into more of the sapwood. And then early spring, talking about the pupation, and then it'll emerge as an adult with these very distinct D-shaped exit holes, again in Vermont around June. Typically a 1-year cycle, although in very, very healthy trees where the trees aren't under a lot of stress or there isn't a lot of insect population or larva population in the trees, this could be upwards of a 2-year cycle. And we've been told that the larva can exist in a piece of firewood for upwards of 2 years. And again, the adult only travels about 2 miles at best, and does do a little bit of feeding on the leaves of the ash tree, but the damage is negligible. The damage to the ash really comes from the larva. It's a little better close up. So the larva, eggs hatch, and larva goes into the phloem. And if you remember, you're back from your high school biology and photosynthesis, so the tree needs carbon dioxide and water, and those mix up in the leaves, and you add a little sunshine and let the chloroplasts do their thing, and the tree produces a carbohydrate. And that carbohydrate is distributed throughout the tree through the inner bark or the phloem. And then just beneath the inner bark is the cambium, kind of the living, growing part of the tree. And if, as a kid, you ever took your thumbnail and kind of scraped a branch on a tree and felt that slimy green stuff, that's cambium. So, and that's where the larva hangs out and feeds. It's a great source of food for the larva. And then as it matures, and it'll head into the xylem or the sapwood, and the sapwood is the portion of the tree that allows water to come up into the upper part of the tree. So it really wreaks havoc in the trees, if, for lack of a better phrase, the tree's plumbing system. And again, these galleries are very distinct, and once you've seen them, you'll never forget them. And other characteristics, canopy thinning. And typically this, you're going to notice this 3 to 5 years into the infestation. So the insect will start near the top of the tree, and it'll take 3 to 5 years before you start noticing these telltale symptoms. So canopy thinning, these sprouts, so you have latent buds in the main stem. The buds will break. The tree's trying to put out new branches, new leaves, area to survive. Very telling is the woodpecker flecking. So the tree will actually turn into a very light color because woodpeckers are flecking the bark off and looking for the larva. And then a little less obvious is bark splitting, and then these D-shaped exit holes. And again, these are tough to detect. It was pointed out to me by one of the task force members last week that EAB is spreading in the county. And for those of you who travel over the causeway and head north into the county, if you take a peek to your left, you'll see those green ash trees with those telltale symptoms of EAB infestation. And what's even more troubling is, they're in real close proximity to the utility lines. And I know Vermont Electric Co-op, their foresters are very concerned about the impact that EAB is going to have on their utility lines. And again, in the general area, if you're going across the causeway heading north, just take a peek to the west, and you're going to see EAB infested trees. Now, Grand Isle County, the 5 communities in the county have come together and formed this task force. We have lots of partners. We have our Regional Planning Commission, our Conservation District, and it's great to welcome Molly on board. Our Economic Development Corporation with Sherry Potvin and Guy and all of his associates at the South Hero Land Trust. On the public side, all 5 municipalities are engaged. We do also have outreach to the state parks, Fish and Wildlife Department, and VTrans. Vermont Electric Co-op, as well as Velco, is involved in this task force. We do have a number of private landowners, and we are outreaching to businesses that provide tree service work or deal with firewood, or maybe excavating contractors that do land clearing here in the islands. And the task force, Guy, I think you were correct. It was very early 2019 when we really formed in earnest. And we've had great support from the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, University of Vermont Extension Service, and the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Foods, and Markets. Task force deliverables, and this is grant support action items, some of which have been derailed by the COVID-19 considerations for COVID-19. We are hosting a workshop in each of the island communities, and in lieu of a workshop here in South Hero, we're hosting this webinar. But we have had well-attended workshops in North Hero and Grand Isle. Nancy Patch, our county forester, has done some outreach in Alberg, and we have yet to do anything in Isle Lamont. We have a number of folks who went through first detector training to learn how to identify not only EAB, but other invasive pests. We've done these public tree inventories in South Hero, Grand Isle, and North Hero, hoping again to get to Isle Lamont and Alberg this summer. Guy Maguire with South Hero Land Trust has launched some social media platforms for us, and we'll be working with the Economic Development Corporation, Sherry and her folks, to do some more business outreach. One thing that fell off was derailed this year. We were going to put together specific tree felling training for state and local highway crews. Ash trees are quite dangerous to deal with once they have been infested for 3 or 5 or more years. There's some studies out in the lake states indicated that the structural integrity of a EAB infested ash tree after about 5 years or so is that of a styrofoam cup. So very dangerous trees to deal with. We hope to get some training at some point to our state and local highway crews on how to deal with these. We've launched a neighbor sharing wood with neighbor program, again, to try and keep the wood local and not move it off the islands or move it between communities. Pardon me. So if you are having an ash tree taken down, pardon me, and don't burn firewood, but have a neighbor who does, we're asking you to share that wood with your neighbor. There has been a little bit of work about looking at specific ordinances. I think South Hero has an ordinance in place now to deal with EAB and ash trees. Pardon me. And looking also for preserving legacy ash trees and those trees that have some significance in our community that we might want to treat with an insecticide to preserve those trees. And there's also a lingering ash project that's been launched by the South Hero Land Trust. If you remember, I mentioned that 99.7% of the ash trees are in peril, but there is 0.3% that seem to show some level of resistance. And again, we're collaborating with a lot of our stakeholders and our county forester, and we'll be doing more with Molly at the Conservation District.